wanted to say, I hope you'll join me in welcoming once again Dr. Amy Laura Hall.
Thank you so much for the hospitality. So, just in case you don't know much about your matron saint, which I love that term, I thought I'd say a few more words about Julian of Norwich. So, she was the first woman we know of to have composed a book in English. It's important to note that English was the language spoken by common people. So when you hear that she's the first woman who composed a book in English, try not to hear a fancy British accent. She was speaking in the vernacular. She was writing, composing words about God that were in the language of the common people, of us. She was a commoner, writing in a common language. The aristocracy spoke French. The fancy people who had the degrees with which to speak about God wrote and spoke in Latin. She received her visions and wrote about them in the common language of English. She also, if you think of her as being sort of set apart and far away from the mundane matters, try to readjust your vision of her as the church secretary. Her space in the St. Julian's Church in Norwich originally looked out on a busy city, in one of the busiest cities in that part of the world, in Norwich. She looked out onto a busy street, not as currently in a calm garden. And she would have seen people coming and going from St. Julian's Church. So one of my students a long time ago suggested, well, possibly we should think of her like the church secretary. She wrote in common, she composed in common, and in her visions, she sees us kinned at one and brought to be one family across all different lines of the British hierarchy at the time. Her words are distinctive, but I want also to note that another way that someone in the last session, I don't remember who it was, she might be here, suggested to think of Julian as being in conversation with her contemporaries, not necessarily with the church leaders, but with her contemporaries, so that she wasn't composing her words for fancy people. She was composing her words and talking about her words with lay people. She was a lay person. She was not clergy. Into that setting, I want us to then consider this text of a woman at a well at noon in a part of the country where it's hot at noon. Perhaps we can consider Cedar Park. She's there at noon, and I want to note some things in the text that are easy to accentuate in a way that just wouldn't be quite accurate. So it is not unusual during this time, in biblical times, for a man to speak to a woman at a well. There are multiple passages in the Hebrew Bible where men and women have conversations at a well. It's also the case that we have evidence of this time period of rabbis having arguments with women. So it's important not to somehow promote Jesus's words by suggesting that he was uniquely liberatory as a rabbi, as a teacher. So it's a little confusing that the disciples, when they come back from doing an expedition to HEB, when they come back from buying food, it's a little confusing that they're astonished. But one way to think about why they might have been astonished is that he's genuinely having an argument with her about where it is, or, I mean, that, I think, yeah, argumentation, not a discord, but they are debating one another about where it is that the people of God are to worship. And notice what Jesus does not dwell on. So there might have been people there at the well, people who knew that this woman had had 5 husbands. He gets that out of the way. Yada, 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 whatever. You've had 5 husbands. Yeah, and I know, the man you're with right now isn't your husband. He does not, please note, suggest that she look inside herself and determine exactly why she has had 5 husbands. He does not dwell on that. That is not the matter of the text. It is not the matter of the text. They go on to have a conversation with one another about where people will worship God as the chosen people. And Jesus says, basically, I am the well. I don't have a bucket. You're very right about that. You pointed that out. I am the living water. I am the living water. So when I first was thinking about preaching on this text, what struck me most was that this woman is the first apostle in the Gospel of John. She's the first person to whom Jesus attests that he is the living water. He is very explicit with her, and she goes on to testify to what she's heard. So that suggests that she did not find it to be bad news that Jesus knew everything about her. Because honestly, the Johannine Jesus, I don't find him to be my favorite Jesus. He comes across in many passages, and the word I would use is imperious. He's sort of above it all. So the idea that there is someone walking around on the mundane earth who knows everything about me, that is not comforting to me. That comes across to me like surveillance. But she receives this word in such a way that she goes out to testify, to be an apostle, to be a preacher. This is a man who knows all about me, and that's good news. One way to think about it is that she sees herself as seen, as some of the young people used the phrase, I feel seen, in a good way. I sense that you see me, you know me, I'm seen and beloved. So I want to go back to Julian in closing. And I'm going to read to you words that I worked really hard on, because I figure I might as well go ahead and reuse them here. So the last chapter of my little book, Laughing at the Devil, on Julian's writings, the last chapter it's the 4th chapter, and I entitled it Bodies. Bodies. The chapters run time, truth, blood as spiritual safety, and bodies. And the subtitle of this chapter is Nakedly and Truly, which is a phrase that Julian uses for being seen by God in a loving, omni-amity way. an all-knowing and all-loving way. The phrase I have used for this final chapter of the book is nakedly and truly. This phrase comes early for Julian in her short text, chapter 17. Here she is thinking through how God has shown to her that he receives our confession in such a way that our shame is healed. Although a man has the scars of healed wounds, I'm reading from her text, although a man has the scars of healed wounds, when he appears before God, they do not deface, but ennoble him, end quote. It is not as if the process of confession is magic. I still bear the scars of the wounds that someone else has caused and the wounds that I've caused myself. But I can come before God with my fully unabashed humanity, trusting that Jesus has known the worst that I have known, and that I am never alone in what I have endured or in what I have inflicted. I am not sure exactly what this means. I am still trying to learn, and while it's almost a decade since I wrote this, I can testify that's still true. I think it means something like standing in front of a mirror, naked, and seeing myself as though so absolutely safe and totally beloved that I am unappraised. Unappraised. The standards of evaluation are taken away, and I receive a vision of myself as God sees me, immeasurably glorified. Knowing that God is not viewing us with scorn, but is ready to heal us and be kin with us, we may show ourselves, as she puts it, nakedly and truly to God. Julian envisions the world held safe in such a way that sin is not shameful to man, but his glory. In this passage, she touches upon one of the most radical implications of her text, the glory of those whose lives are obviously marked by the fall and suffering of humanity. Naming David, the one who, that one, David, King David, Peter and Paul, Thomas the twin, and Mary Magdalene, Julian concludes that it is no shame to them that they have sinned, for there the badge of their sin is changed into glory. Fear of the suffering brought on by the fall and fear of the fall itself are transformed as Christ pulls us near. Drawing on this passage, a scholar named Fritz Bauerschmidt writes that in Julian's vision, the structure of the social body of Christ gives pride of place not to those who possess the most power, but to those who have been most in need and have received the greatest mercy. The miracle that is the banquet of the bread of life, this body of Christ strewn all over the planet on tables of communion, Eucharist, each time people receive the Lord's Supper, that miracle is my best experience that my love for God is not unrequited. This requires of me that I invite God precisely to my hurt and to find me immeasurably lovable. The 20th century poet Delmore Schwartz has a section from his volume, Last and Lost Poems, that I learned to read in this way, as a love song from God. It was actually a Sisters of Mercy woman religious named Margaret Farley, who taught in her sexual ethics class that we needed to hear this poem as a love song from God. Now, I'll tell you, the words feel awkward to me, even as I have put them in a book. But I'm going to read to you and imagine these as words between you and then God. A discourse at a well on a hot noon. Kiss me there where pride is glittering. Kiss me where I am ripened and round fruit. Kiss me wherever, however, I am supple, bare and flare. Let the bell be rung as long as I am young. Let ring and fly like a great bronze wing. I'll kiss you wherever you think you are poor, wherever you shudder, feeling striped or barred, because you think you are bloodless, skinny, or marred, until your gaze has been stilled, until you are shamed again no more. I'll kiss you until your body and soul, the mind in the body being fulfilled, suspend their dread and civil war.